Hey, hi Pins. Hey, how are you,
Hi,
man?
Richard. Hi, how are you?
Hey, how's everything in UK, man?
Oh, very good. Thank you. We're having nice warm days.
Oh, here we have COVID days.
Oh, yeah.
uh,
To-
anyway, hey,
Yeah.
I assume you're getting ready for Saturday, our Saturday's webinar at 5 p.m. Malaysian time.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, Richard. I think it's highly topical, super interesting area, which I think a lot of people, would benefit not just to learn from, but will be very exciting for them because they will probably be able to relate to it also.
Interesting. But I actually have been receiving questions from my friends.
Yeah.
What in the world is genome editing in the law? So of course I told them log on Saturday. But now that I have you here,
Yes.
maybe you can just share with me a few minutes. What actually are you going to speak on Saturday so that we can, since this is being recorded, I can share it with the rest of the audience to watch. So what is genome editing
Sure.
in the law?
Okay. So you know what? The best way I think that I can try to explain this is to give you a scenario, right?
Okay.
So you know who Captain America is, obviously,
Of
right?
course, yeah. Who doesn't? Yeah. Mm.
Now I know why am I talking about Captain America? Part of this whole. Wait, is it Marvel or DC? It's Marvel, right? Okay,
Marvel, yeah,
it's
it's
Marvel.
Marvel. Mm.
Sorry, please don't be angry with me if I don't know the difference between the Marvel and the DC worlds. But so imagine Captain America obviously it's part of that amazing cinematic universe, right? About superheroes, villains, and things like that. Now I want you to try to imagine what if we had real life Captain Americas, right?
Mm.
If you remember from the stories of Captain America, he was injected with this kind of super soldier serum, right? Which basically gave him all his enhanced powers and super strength and whatever not, right? Now, with genome editing, it's not a serum, but imagine if it is a technology that can make similar changes to your DNA, Richard, and make you become Captain America,
Wow, I
for
would take it,
example.
man. Yeah, of course I become Captain Malaysia, but yeah. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so
That's
I mean
interesting.
that's
Yeah.
that's the gist of it, right? Gene editing really is about this group of technologies that have the ability to modify the DNA
So how
in a very simple way.
that's super. Now you're making me thinking. I mean, just have the webinar now instead of Saturday, but how does the law come in then? How does the law come?
Okay, I think that's a fantastic question, and I think maybe people sometimes don't think enough about it. I will post. Oh, is that midnight?
So there you go. We got my cat appearing in the recording, but you were about to just say what
Yeah,
about this the law and genome
yeah. Yeah, I guess, Richard, as lawyers, I think our main concern would always be one, who's regulating this? Two, is it safe?
Mm.
Three, what if something goes wrong? Who is responsible? Four, do we allow people to have unfettered access to it? Who gets it? Who doesn't? Should it be part of a national healthcare system, for instance? These are just like a few questions, that we can think about when it comes to
Wow.
considering the whole legal framework about these kind of
Never thought about
technologies,
this.
right?
Mm.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, for example, as a parent, for example, if you were given the opportunity to use this kind of technology to say model your future child,
Or cure
right?
cancer.
Yeah, cure cancer even. So it's currently being used for a lot of amazing therapies at the moment. But a lot of the concern comes from what happens if it's not just therapy, which is to treat conditions,
Mm.
genetic diseases, but what happens if we cross the line into enhancing, augmentation, making ourselves, well, for
Mm.
want of a better word, superhuman.
Mm.
So
Wow.
legally speaking, yeah.
Well, this Saturday is going to be a a superhero topic then.
Well, yeah, I think definitely there is a lot of superhero elements, but it doesn't have to
Hmm.
be superhero. For example, I think a lot of it has to do with sports. Richard, what happens if a person has the ability to perhaps use technologies like these to maybe have the next child who is the next Kobe Bryant, for instance?
Yeah, or the next Usain Bolt or the next Serena Williams.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I think it raises huge lots of legal questions, but also ethical questions. And
This.
maybe I think sometimes from a person's perspective, like a regular person off the street, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's always about, oh, this is very cool,
Hmm.
but because we're doing research in this area, then we need to go a little bit deeper into what some of the fine points
Sorry
are
about that. Yeah.
and how it really does affect all of us really on a bigger scale.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Wow. Now I'm going to really get excited about this, man. I mean, we've been planning this for a few weeks now, but
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. I tell you what. I'm going to upload this video up, and then hopefully it will assist people who don't understand what is it about. And
Yeah.
I'll see you on Saturday at Malaysian
Yeah.
time,
Also,
5 p.m.
yeah. Also, Richard, it's if people want to have like a little sneak preview, they could also watch old movies like Gattaca, which stars Ethan
Oh
Hawke and Uma
yes,
Thurman,
yeah,
because
Ethan
that
Hawke.
also is something similar. And even
Mm.
the one with The Rock with that his giant
Rampage.
Rampage, yes, that's the
Yeah, yeah.
one. That one used gene editing technologies as part of the storyline also. So
Wow.
it's a lot in popular culture as well. So very, very
Okay.
topical
All
indeed.
right. I'll see you. I'll see you on Saturday then.
Sure
Okay.
thing. Thanks a lot. Looking
Okay.
forward to it, Richard.
All right. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Okay, bye. Bye.
Hi, Pins.
Hi, Richard. Hi.
Yeah, and there you go. From that few days ago, now we are here live.
Yes, very, very happy to be here.
Yeah, one of your good friend is here. Our good friend Kenny Lai from Ipoh.
Hi, Kenny Lai.
So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the continuing RWC community webinar. I am Richard Wee, and we're here. It's a dear friend of mine. We've known each other for many years. She even came to attend my wedding back in Bali many years ago. Never forget it. And interesting fact, while we all know her as that Dr. Lau Pin Lean, but I know her as Juliet the Orange. So why don't you all Google the name Juliet the Orange and find out how talented this person next to me on the video is. So how are you, Pin Lean?
All doing well, Richard. Very excited to be here. It's been such uncertain times, but I'm glad that we can still have this collegiality and this connection through webinars, at least, at the very, very least. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I know you just had breakfast in UK. So how's England? Yeah.
No, it's all good. It's still here. It's coffee.
It's a warm weather in Petaling Jaya today. I'm sitting next to the window. It's 5:07 p.m. now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I understand you are in I hope I pronounce this correctly. Brunel University.
Yes, Brunel University, London. Yeah, it's not in central London. It's just slightly outside of London, central London, in Uxbridge. So, but it's about, I don't know, if you take the underground, it's maybe about 45 minutes into the city, which is it's not too
Yeah,
bad.
not too far for London standard.
Yeah.
45 minutes, nothing. Yeah.
And I quite like the idea of living not in the city.
Yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah.
suppose you are in the fourth circle, right?
Yes,
Or
yeah.
fourth ring. Yeah,
I
I
know.
can't
I think
remember.
it might be the last ring. It might be
The last ring. Yeah. Okay.
zone
All
6.
right.
Yeah.
All right. So, would you mind? I mean, since you're mentioning about Brunel, why don't you share with us what you are doing in Brunel and what you're lecturing there, which I think will be they will understand why we invited you to speak here today.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Well, so I've joined Brunel quite recently. Although I got my job offer a year ago during the pandemic. But of course, because we couldn't travel, so I was still in Malaysia at that time. So I moved here earlier this year in February. And currently, my role in Brunel is as a lecturer in bio law. And basically, this would cover aspects of my research, which is in biomedical laws, generally speaking, right? And my interest is particularly geared towards genetic interventions, gene editing technologies, but obviously discussed from the legal aspect, the ethical aspects. And my research at the very beginning, when I started this, was on pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, which is which is
So
basically
deep.
a kind of it goes hand in hand with IVF, where you do screening before implantation of an embryo into the woman's womb.
Okay.
So that
I don't know whether this is the correct webinar. No? We have a bunch of lawyers.
yeah, but anyway, in a nutshell, I'm in Brunel Law School, and so this is basically my research area, and
Oh,
I'm not an expert by any means, but I think this is such a interesting and developing area that we should actually be paying attention to as well. Yeah.
yeah, good stuff, man. Good stuff, Pins. I really thank you for spending the time here. I mean, on a Saturday morning in England, it's actually free to walk around in England now compared to us in Malaysia. We
Yeah.
are unfortunately back to March
MCO.
2020. Yeah, it's another MCO. It's a combination of one after another comical errors. And also the irresponsibility of the people, that we are back to square one, and it's got worse now. Anyway, we will fight back. Hopefully, we'll get better soon. Now,
Yeah.
back to this topic. So, with such an interesting topic, like you say, IVF and all that, maybe you can just share with me or with the viewers here, what is generally genome editing, and how does the law come into play here? Generally, first.
Okay, so I think it's easier to start like from a general perspective. There are absolutely too many variables to go into each specific area, right? So I would say genome obviously is basically our complete genetic information, like say the human genome, for instance. And genome editing is basically a group of technologies which has the ability to make changes in these DNAs, whether to modify, to insert, to correct, etc., things like that, right? I just want to be clear that this is actually not a new technology. Gene editing is not new. It's been, I think, used quite a bit since the 90s. Gene therapies have been around from probably about the 70s, right? Now, the reason why I think it's made such a huge impact in the last, say, maybe 10 years is because of possibilities of the development of new technologies in gene editing. And one of these technologies is called CRISPR-Cas9.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yes. And, the creators of CRISPR won the Nobel Prize last year. And it's because of these of CRISPR that this whole debate was triggered all over again, but also because on the global scale, right, there's always been huge concerns about the ethics of human gene editing, particularly where changes can be heritable through the different generations. So that's what we call germline editing, right? Now, this came about because of a so-called experiment that took place in China in 2018.
Let's talk about the case. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the reason why this has come to the fore. And also CRISPR has made it easier, cheaper, and more efficient than other previous gene editing techniques like ZFNs and TALENs. Those are other techniques that have been used in plant, agriculture, animals, right? GMOs, things like that. So all that has been used before. But the reason why CRISPR is so huge is because of its possibilities that perhaps were not part of what the earlier technologies were.
What I've done, Pin Lean, I mean, I'm not a big proponent of Wikipedia, but I usually like to read Wikipedia first with a huge pinch of salt, and then start doing my research,
Yeah.
So to make it easier for everybody here, I'm just sharing Wikipedia. But please, ladies and gentlemen, it is not an authority. Wikipedia is never an authority, but it's a good place to start for those who don't understand these scripts. As C9, I call it. I think it's called C9. Or is it
Cas9.
S9? Sorry,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
a kind of
S9. Yeah.
protein. Yeah.
Maybe before we start talking about the Chinese case from China, maybe we can just spend another 30 seconds more. What exactly is this S9 gene editing program, Pins? Maybe
Okay,
with some examples for
I
the
will.
listeners.
Okay, I have this kind of. Let me see how I can share.
Mm.
I can share basically a pictorial about. Sorry.
Yeah, I think you can share a screen here. If you
Okay.
can't, let me know. I can share for you.
Okay, I can share my screen so you guys can see my screen
Yes.
now.
Yes, I'm adding it on now. Yes.
Okay, great. I'm just going to open up this picture that I have on my desktop, which
Oh,
shows.
nice. Oh, is this? This is nice.
So this
Okay.
is a
All right.
picture, right? And I'll try to explain. And I have to tell you, Richard, when I first started this whole journey as well, there were a lot of things that I had to learn also about how this was going to work, right? So, like if you look at this graph here, Cas9 is a particular kind of enzyme, right? And it was this whole technology, CRISPR, was developed in 2012, right? And CRISPR itself is short for clustered regularly interspaced palindromic repeats, right?
Okay.
And this is just a technology where the DNA, the task for DNA recognition is carried out by what you see here, a guide RNA, right? RNA is ribonucleic acid, which actually is kind of like a messenger for protein synthesization and things like that, right?
Cool.
And so what Cas9 here does, because it's a guide RNA, it acts as a kind of molecular scissors, right? That cuts a recognized viral sequence and then allows you to replace that viral sequence over here.
I see. So it's like a cut and paste. I'm trying to simplify for everybody here. I must say the gene looks like yellow submarine from the shape looks like yellow submarine from Beatles. But yes, I understand. So basically, it's like a cut and paste, right?
Yes, yeah.
Take out a gene and brilliant. Okay,
Yeah,
so without trying to make this into a medical
correct, yeah.
Can you finish it up?
So basically, think of the fact that it's like how you cut and paste some stuff and then put it into Microsoft Word, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
You just Control V, Control C, Control V. So okay, that's like very, very simplistic lah, right? But imagine if CRISPR has this ability as well in much more sophisticated ways than previous technologies, right? And because it's fast, it's more efficient, it's cheaper. Of course, it has side effects as well, what we call off-site mutations and things like that. But I mean, at the very outset, just looking at it from this angle, it's like, wow, it's fantastic. It can help with genetic conditions, sickle cell anemia, cystic fibrosis, leukemia, things like that, right? So the promise that it holds is really tremendous.
Yeah, it's interesting. Can you imagine that you can cut out a bad gene and insert a better gene, right?
Yeah, or just to allow it to repair, right? You basically remove the mutated gene, and then you maybe insert a pre-designed, a healthy sequence for example, and then it continues naturally and it becomes part of your system in that sense, right? I mean, a lot of it obviously sounds very theoretical at this point. We're not at this point where it's going to be safe enough completely for human use, which is why it is so important to ensure that there are very strict, rigorous standards of ethics, research councils, things like this, to ensure that the proper interventions have been adequately and properly designed.
I can see the danger already.
Yeah.
I actually can see the danger now. Yeah. I mean, since we were using the Captain America in our introduction video just now, which we recorded about 5 days ago.
Yeah.
Let's take that character, and if the character leaves now, what's happening is that this C9 or S9, sorry, someone will use the technology to cut out his poor genes, which makes him, that's why he was so skinny and physically weak, right? Cut out and then replaced with this superhuman power combination of Usain Bolt and John Rambo and the
Assuming
quickness.
we can actually do that scientifically.
Yeah, and then the John Rambo, and then the quickness of Serena Williams, the intellectualism of the prime minister from New Zealand, put in and then insert into this person, and we have Captain America. I mean, I'm making it simple, but
Yeah.
effectively that's what we're talking about, right? It's
I mean, the dystopian imagery is always there, right? Especially when we deal with technologies that we are still learning about, right? And knowing the kind of potential that they can have for humankind and eradication of diseases, there is, of course, at the back of the mind as well, right? When it comes with any technologies, right? Even with industrialization and stuff like that, there's always at the back of your mind, what happens if somebody misuses this, right? So I mean, let's take guns for instance, right? And in the Constitution of the United States of America, under Article 2, the right to bear arms, and of course it made sense at that point of time, right? But now we also see that guns can be misused.
definitely heavily misused.
Yeah, so the same goes with technologies like this, right? It has a lot of promise and importance for scientific communities, for medical communities, for people who are suffering from specific conditions that can be treated with these technologies, right? But then your fear is always that someone goes rogue.
Betul. Yeah, that's the worry lah. But
Yeah.
okay, I love the fact that we have established set the standards for our discussion the next half an hour or so.
Yeah.
And once again, I repeat for those who just logged on, I know this topic at the beginning sounds very dry and like, what the hell is this? But basically, what we are dealing with, in my view, it's a new blue ocean, particularly for lawyers. I think, as you know, Pins, my law firm, we've been accused for many times for publicity and advertising. I think if people want to accuse them, go ahead. But what I am trying to do personally, is to share new ideas with fellow members of the bar, so that the members of the bar has an opportunity to expand their services and learn new things, like what we did with sports law many years ago and esports many years ago. And in recent times, we've been pushing fintech, which has been heavily embraced by many lawyers. Well done to all the lawyers.
Yeah.
But this is something new. I've been reading up on this for more than a year before I discussed with you, Pin Lean. And what I wanted to do was to try and see whether we lawyers can get involved in what clearly is a scientific area, where we are swimming among scientists.
Yeah.
And we are the lonely black robe swimmer in the ocean of highly intelligent and talented scientists.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning earlier before this video, before our live broadcast, about an infamous case in China. I think it is infamous, right? To the point where in 2018 there was even a call. It was reported on the Star newspaper by a University of Malaya law lecturer.
Yes.
I think it was Dr. Sharon. I think I thought
Dr.
I saw her
Sharon
name.
Cole, yeah.
Dr. Sharon Cole, yes, yeah. Where the said lecturer propounded the idea of having an ethics committee to govern this area. So I'm going to keep quiet now for the next 5 minutes, Pins. Why don't you set up the foundation on what is this infamous Chinese case about?
Yeah.
And then, so I'm going to make you be a teacher here. I'm just going to shut up and take notes and let everybody here listen to you. So all your Pins. I'm all ears. Yep.
Thanks, Richard. So before I tell you about the case of this doctor in China, his name is Dr. He Jiankui, right? I have to tell you about the fact that in 2015 in Washington, D.C., right, there was the first international summit on human genome editing, and many academics, scholars, scientists all came together. And this was when CRISPR was just starting to take off, right? It was created in 2012 and decided that we need to put a moratorium a ban basically on human gene editing that has germline consequences. Germline meaning that can be carried through to different generations, right? So there was this, it's not an international law or anything per se, but it was a community that came together and decided that we cannot do this until we know that it's safe, until we can figure out how we're going to regulate this and how the ethics and considerations of safety are all going to come in and how it impacts. And obviously, basically, more research needed to be done first, right? So that was in 2015. Now, the second summit took place in 2018. And this is when this doctor from China, Dr. He Jiankui, made an announcement during the summit in Hong Kong this time that he had actually, I'm going to use this word, secretly used CRISPR to basically gene edit embryos. And now those embryos are twin girls called Lulu and Nana. So when he made this...
So when they combine, they become Luna. Anyway.
Yeah, so the entire scientific community, the research community was shell-shocked, right? Because first of all, there was the moratorium. Secondly, I guess they did not realize that someone was actually going to try and gene edit embryos. Although by this time, Richard, there was already so much talk about designer babies in the future, dystopian future, basically the whole Captain America scenario that we talked about. Now, the real scenario is that it's not as exciting as Captain America, but what Dr. He Jiankui did was basically to try and develop some kind of HIV resistance for the embryos, right? HIV resistance, Richard, right? And the problem here is, why are you creating resistance towards HIV virus for embryos that are going to be implanted into the mother, unless the mother is maybe infected with HIV? Well, so what was the point, right? Here, that's one. And also the complexity of genome editing is so serious right, that it can be excessively risky. And then later, 2 years later, I think it was found out that even one of the twins actually does not have the resistance anymore, because there is a particular gene, like earlier I mentioned to you, off-site mutations, right? Basically knocks out another gene called CCR5 gene as well.
So within the genes, they're having a battle in our body. Yeah.
There's a battle, right? So which tells you that really what happens when you are intervening into the body like this, right? That there are mutations that you cannot see at that point of time, and that effects may be felt much later. Now, the thing about Lulu and Nana is, so obviously Dr. He Jiankui was imprisoned. He went through a trial. He was fined for medical malpractice. China has consistently maintained that they actually do not allow these kinds of technologies to be used in the way that he has done, right? So that was the huge case, and there was so much that came out of it, and this is when the entire scientific community, research community came back and started very serious discussions again about what we need to do. And this is where, Richard, I think we as lawyers come in, and I don't think we are definitely not going to be the loners anymore. So in regulation of biotechnologies, we always consider what we call the ELSIs: ethical, legal, social implications of technologies.
I'm going to write this down. ELSI, huh?
ELSI. Okay. So it's a common term that's used in the communities. ELSIs are important. So you see, L stands for legal, right? Now, so this is why the role of lawyers are important as well, because it's not just about the fact that you have a technology that you are going to push out to people. It's about the fact that you need to, in accordance with constitutional and fundamental freedoms, in accordance with order in a state, for instance, the regulation always has to come in. The lawyers have to come in at some point, and I guess it's always it's a balancing process, Richard. It's not going to be an easy task, and until today, we do not have a unifying international regulation for human genome.
On this area, yeah. Interesting, because recently, in my involvement in my work, I've been exposed to certain areas, particularly about genome editing in sports,
Yeah.
or should I say, genes in sports. So I then discovered exactly what you said, Pins, that it is no, I wouldn't use the word unregulated. It
Yeah.
is not regulated to the point where there is clarity.
Yeah.
So, for
Yeah.
example, fintech in Malaysia, um, or even biotech in Malaysia, it is fairly heavily regulated. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
we all lawyers as a bar counsel, for example, our practice are heavily regulated. Uh, but when it comes to gene editing, in my research, as shared with you for over the year, 1 year,
Yeah.
I can't seem to find a universal document in Malaysia. Yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe on your side, with your experience, well, I know you did your PhD in Hungary, and you studied this area, and now with you in England, back in England, and you're now back in England. So my wife will say motherland. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I got my hometown is at Goodison Park,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
yours
I
is
know.
yours is at Enfield, so okay lah,
Just
not too bad. Yeah,
across
that's
the road,
across the
Richard.
park. Yeah. So, but how is the law like in regulation like in UK and in Europe, so that maybe the listeners here, who I believe mostly are Malaysians, and
Yeah.
some could be lawyers. And later on, by the way, Pins, this will be uploaded on YouTube, so many people
Okay.
will re-watch this video. So some people may watch this video 1 year from now, But
Yeah.
the point is that what can we share with them is happening now in UK and
Yeah.
in Europe in terms of regulating gene editing.
Okay, so I mean, this is where I so basically, just before I go into this, Richard, I wanted to highlight that there was a really amazing paper that was written by two professors in USM, and they wrote about the state of regulations in Malaysia regarding gene editing. And obviously there is no one regulation about gene editing, but there is a series of different guidelines that do not have legal effect, right? Regarding, they say, stem cells, stem cell research, stem cell donations, things like this, biotech regulation. These are all there, right? So um, it comes down to the issue of whether or not a particular country or state is ready to regulate these kinds of things, right? Now,
Sorry, please, before you proceed, so I can
yeah,
share the article. Is it by Professor Kalidasan and Kumita Tevadas? Is that the one?
yes, that's
Okay.
Professor V. Kalidasan or something.
Okay.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
I'll share that article on the comments for the viewers to watch, to link on. Sorry. Proceed now.
No,
Thank you.
no,
Thank
no
you.
worries. No, actually, good that you mentioned it, because I wanted to highlight one of the things that was very striking to me from that article is the fact that the authors of the article also recognize that there is much more that's needed in terms of education and awareness for Malaysian public, about this particular area. And a lot of that it's a fantastic paper, Richard. Go and check it out, right? There are very clear, very detailed sections about perceptions of the Malaysian public about these kinds of technologies, right? So it's fantastic to read. And the key thing that I took away is that we need so much more education in this regard. Yeah, but anyway, okay, yeah, sorry. To get back to what we were talking about. So from the EU perspective, so we're looking at the European Union, and then of course there are instruments from the Council of Europe level as well, right? So I recently did a study on EU law on gene editing technologies, but this is from European Union. So just to clarify, maybe this was something that I never knew until much later as well. The European Union and the Council of Europe are not the same, although the
Two
composition
different
of the
things.
countries are similar, right?
Yeah.
So there are several directives from the EU itself, right? On gene editing, right? So the European Commission, the Parliament, the European Medicines Agency. So these are all at the EU level. At the Council of Europe level, there is what we call the Oviedo Convention, which is a convention about the human genome and things like that, right? And so I can't give you exactly the names of the directives, but they are directives such as directives relating to patents, Direct
Mm.
9844 EC. I'm just trying to look through some of my
So
notes.
there's a element of intellectual property.
There are
Mm.
directives on GMOs under the EU GMO directives of 2001. There are CJEU Court of Justice of the European Union cases about GMOs and organisms and things like that. There's this European Union multi-annual horizon framework programs also,
Mm.
which has to comply with the EU Charter and the European Convention of Human Rights and things like that.
Cool.
There is clinical trials regulations, right? Basically, I think what I'm trying, and there's advanced therapy medicinal products directives. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that
It's deep, man.
there's a lot. There's a lot of regulation here. There is no one specific regulation, but it comes in different ways. Gene editing is regulated through different ways, through all these different directives, right? And at the Council of Europe level, it is simply the fact that you cannot make changes to the human genome under the Oviedo Convention. Now, of course, the thing is only this applies to this particular region, right? The US, I am not sure. I don't think that the US actually bans gene editing. I don't think it's banned there.
Yeah, there is some sort of regulation there. There is.
There is moratorium. There's a moratorium
Yeah.
because the US is a huge part of the summit in Washington and in Hong Kong. And the National Institutes of Health, the National Academy of Sciences in the US, they have this moratorium. But it's not really a ban, but it's a moratorium. And I think for other things that may have GMOs and things like that, it's all regulated by the FDA, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
So can you imagine, just for a short while, if we do this gene editing in sports, right? I got this question from my friends who do sports, and we as you mentioned, as I mentioned earlier, imagine we cut and paste the S9 thing, and then we put in the genes of similar to Mr. Usain Bolt into, say, Richard Wee, the fatty, and now I can run as fast as him. Yeah, so wouldn't that raise some ethical issues, right?
Yeah, definitely. Ethics is also a huge part of the conversation, Richard. So I think it's very hard to divorce these areas, the ELSIs. It's very hard to divorce the ELSIs. The ethics has to tie in with the legal has to tie in with the social. I think at the end of the day, we're looking at citizens, members of the public who will ultimately benefit from these kinds of technologies. So the impact on the public is huge, right?
Yeah, from a sports point of view, this could be the new doping.
Yeah, no, actually it is. It's been, I've read some academic articles where they are saying that gene editing is kind of the new doping in sports. And I think there were some interesting questions about whether in certain types of sports, let's say football, or let's say athletics, for instance, like who regulates these particular sports? Would it be the CAS, for instance?
Correct.
You know,
correct. To be fair, CAS is a court. They can't regulate. Yeah, there's a court. But you're right.
Yeah.
The other one is, of course, the IOC, the International Olympic Council, blah, blah, blah. And of course, there's always the good old WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, which at the moment is the world policeman for anti-doping. But this is a totally new territory. And the scary thing is that the Chinese doctor, through Lulu and Nana, has proven that it can be done. It's possible. It can be done.
I mean, theoretically, yeah. Basically, the thing is, it has always remained theoretical, right? And further research is needed. So plants and animals, okay, fine, right? But when it comes to human, I think there's a huge fear because humans are going to be able to pass down their genes that have been edited. So that's a huge ethical no over here right now.
Yeah. But right? On the point, Pins, as a matter of mood discussion, I'm just wondering. Of course, you will say, look, Richard, this is genes. The other one is medicine. But let's say we're talking about being ethical, right?
Yeah.
When people created medication prolong life.
Yeah.
Right. So if a person is supposed to, I'm not trying to sound morbid, but if a person is supposed to go and it's time for him or her to go, but because he or she is consuming a certain kind of a prescribed medication and
Yeah.
therefore continuing to sustain life, that itself is cheating the natural process of life. You're supposed to
Yeah.
go, but
Yeah.
don't complain about it. Everyone's okay. It's all right to take medicine and go for surgery and all that, but the moment someone's talking about gene editing, everyone say, oh, it can't be done. So maybe there's something, people may need to elucidate and explain why gene editing is no,
Yeah.
medication is yes, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay. So gene editing, I won't say it's a no-no. It's a yes, but human gene editing that has consequences where it can carry this to future generations is a no-no. So the somatic gene editing, which is the treatment, is all acceptable.
It's
And
okay. Yeah.
I think that so this is where I think there is a line between therapy and enhancement, or therapy and something else,
I like that word, therapy and enhancement.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, therapeutic, non-therapeutic. It's a huge discussion, and it's still an ongoing discussion. And I think this is where people have problems, because when it comes to, let's say, I mean, this is the same argument that you use when you take blood transfusions, when you take medication, when you uh, want to take the best therapies that you can for cancer, for instance, right? So these are all steps that we take. It is part of our humanity to want to try to sustain our lives, right? That's where medicine comes in. And I don't think gene editing is any different over here, particularly where we are looking to treat genetic conditions that will have a debilitating effect in later years in life. So you want to give someone the ability to live a better life, for instance, if you remove a particular mutated gene. Is that okay? So you know what I mean? There's therapy and then there's enhancement. So if we're talking about the sports example, for instance, that might come under the enhancement category as opposed to the therapeutic category, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just putting it in the simplest way. Of course, it's much more complex than that.
Then that.
There's a
Yeah.
whole lot of other discussions about ethics, about moral prerogatives, about autonomy and individual liberty and things like that also lah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wondered after that call in 2018 by the said professor from University of Malaya, no, sorry, the said law lecturer from University of Malaya, whether an ethics committee was formed in the end to oversee this potential infamy, a potential breaking of the rules. Yeah. I wonder, are you aware of it? I can't
I'm
seem
not
to find
aware.
any.
I'm not aware. I'm trying to look also, but I think Malaysia has been through some really tough times over the last couple of years, and I don't think that this is a priority just
At
yet.
the moment, yeah.
At the moment, I mean, it's a reality. In fact, if you also look at the article by Dr. V. Kalidasan, right?
Yes.
He also highlighted that there is very little that's reported on gene editing in Malaysia. There is, because I suppose it comes from a lack of knowledge and awareness of it, and it's about having talent, the skill sets that's needed as well. You need to have the people who are working in this area. Yeah, and there's also the will, right? And it comes down to enforcement as well. At the end of the day, enforcement, which, I mean, Richard, if we can't enforce MCO,
Then how are we going to enforce this? I know what you mean.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I just don't think that we are in that space right now in Malaysia, because this isn't a priority, and that's fine. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, but putting aside whether that ethics committee or agency or department exists, let's assume it doesn't. I think we should have one. We should
Yeah,
have
for
one,
sure.
something like that. Yeah,
For sure.
where the ethics committee will include people like you, who learn both medicine. Sorry, I wouldn't call it medicine. Gene scientists and law, and of course, I know for a fact that Malaysia, we do have a government agency on this area, but for the life of me, I cannot remember the name now. I met that one, one of the doctors
Yeah.
there recently. In fact, there's another area on this point, Pins, is PDPA, the
Yeah,
personal data.
definitely. PDPA definitely comes into question. that's another aspect that relates
Yeah,
to
yeah.
data, genetic materials, and things like that, right? I wouldn't say that there is no ethics committee, Richard. I would say that they might not. I mean, I stand to be corrected, of course, right? But from my knowledge, in terms of biotech, there's definitely ethics.
I
And
think I'm sure there is. Yeah.
definitely, there's ethics
Mm.
committees because you need to have ethics in every kind of experimentations that's done.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there may not be any considerations just yet for gene editing of humans in this particular way.
Mm,
There would definitely be ethics committee considerations for other things like GMOs and plant editing, plant gene editing, for instance, gene therapies, right? Those kind of things. Yes.
Editing the plants. That's very interesting, man.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, because let's say you want to increase production of, I don't know, rice, for instance, or something like that.
You
You
know,
know,
Biz, I think you know from my wife, you know that I absolutely detest vegetables. I cannot, I just don't like vegetables. And people ask me before why. I said I can't stand the smell.
huh? Got smell,
When yeah, when it goes into my mouth, I know for most people they don't even realize there's a smell. I get this horrible green smell in my nose, and I really start to want to throw up. But if we can do a gene editing and get rid of the smell, I mean, just finally consume vegetables. You know,
Oh my goodness.
that may be a good thing. I've always wanted to consume more vegetables. So what I do
Richard
is
has this drink the green smoothie thing.
yeah.
The
In
green
fact, you know,
powder.
yes, I do that. I do that. You know, I even try to cheat my nose by going around it by, for example, consuming salad with a little bit more mayonnaise. But like some people say, yeah, you get the veggie and then you get the fattiness of the mayonnaise. But anyway, better some
Yeah.
veggie than nothing. But interesting you raise this because I would love someone to edit out the horrible chlorophyll smell of vegetables so that I can finally take veggie. Just a
Yeah.
peculiar problem that I have. But yeah, so back to where you were talking about that probably there is
There definitely must be
committees in there.
ethical.
Number
Yes.
one, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's where I suppose as a lawyer we can step in to assist the management of this ethical conduct and ethical behavior.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what about what is in the content? We keep on talking about ethics pins. Um, if you are going to create let's say this committee and you're going to draft the term of reference, so you want to appoint Mr. X, Miss A, and you are telling Miss A, Mr. X, you're going to sit
Yeah.
in this committee, what would be your term of reference to them? What are the kind of ethical rules you think that they should be propounding,
Yeah.
drafting, or creating? Maybe you can share on the point.
Well, I guess from the very outset, uh, okay, maybe not in this exact priority, but definitely one of the considerations is for individual fundamental freedoms and liberty, because I'm very like that. That's one. The other thing which is for me very important is safety. So which means that it has
Mm.
to be safe, it has to be of the highest standards. Uh, and the other thing is transparency.
How you do it, how you get it done.
Yes,
Mm.
exactly. Because
Yeah.
transparency, if you do not have transparency, you are not, it's going to be very problematic for a scientific community if you cannot verify the results of how, this was carried out. And then I would think also you need to have like a research design protocol that is approved by, it
Mm.
has to be either a national, I think national or international ethics board.
I'm just taking down whatever you're saying,
Yeah.
trying
And
to digest it. You're gone. Mm.
yeah, so transparency, like ethical transparency, I think it's very important, so that when a particular endeavor is being carried out, you can see how it's been done, whether it meets the standards, whether it meets requirements, whether it is
Mm.
safe, what are the risks that are involved, and things like that, right?
Mm.
Does
Mm.
the anticipated result outweigh the risks of this particular intervention, for instance?
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think the last 45 minutes or so, I've learned. I feel like a doctor now. But anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, it's a really, I think this requires, I call this I mean, it's not a new term, but it's definitely needs a whole of the world approach.
Mm,
You
mm,
know what I mean? It really has to engage with a huge ecosystem of stakeholders to come in and figure out the best way forward. Because at this moment, I mean, obviously we have COVID over the this year, last year, and things like that. But there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes also, Richard, about trying to come and find ways to take this forward, right? There's
mm,
a fantastic report that was issued by the Nuffield Council on Population Health, called Genome Editing in Human Reproduction, Social and
mm,
Ethical Issues. I
mm,
think
mm.
this publication is available online for free as well.
Cool.
And it analyzes a hypothetical situation when gene editing would actually become routine and safe, right?
Mm,
And what it does is to highlight it really sets out very clear, suggested guidelines how
mm.
this can happen. So that's a fantastic document to read
To
as well.
have,
But,
yeah.
it's more like a hypothetical scenario just yet as well.
Mm, mm.
And that, really, what we are looking for here is to have an ethical consensus,
Yeah, I can see that.
to
Well,
define the legal and the frameworks, to support these kinds of interventions.
mm, this is now I understand why you told me earlier that satu jam tak cukup, 1 hour may not
Yeah,
be enough. Yeah, because I think I can sense that you're really, really scratching the surface. The
no, yeah,
last,
yeah, sure,
you're
yeah,
not even going deep into it yet. Yeah,
not yet,
but
yeah,
okay. So now let's try to be a little bit more practical because, like I said, normally when I do my webinars, I want to help my other fellow colleagues in the
yeah,
bar who's listening in. Um, I when personally I'm still learning too. I half the thing you're telling me is really alien to me, but I like new things and I want to try and
yeah,
learn these. Okay, so how can a lawyer come in and help in this situation? So I suppose other than that so-called ethics committee, I use the word so-called because we don't know what is the name they may call it, right?
yeah,
Then or maybe a clientele who is heavily involved in gene editing. So let's say we find a cure for cancer, and I really hope we can find a cure for
yeah.
cancer,
I know
other than
that's,
COVID, of course. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So if we can find a cure for cancer and COVID, but COVID not really about gene editing. COVID
No,
is
it's a
really a
virus.
fight against it's a virus.
It's a
Yeah.
virus.
If
Yeah,
we can once and for all cure or prevent or severely deplete the veracity of cancer, which has caused a lot of
yes,
anguish
yeah,
among many people around the world. Now, let's say a medical clinic comes to Dr. Lau Pin Lean, the doctor, and say, Dr. Lau, hey, I found this way we can finally stop cancer.
mm,
And we need your legal advice. Now, immediately or from your practical side, what do you think a lawyer can do in a situation? Maybe you can list down 2 or 3 things off the cuff without
yeah,
knowing exactly what this doctor wants to do in your mind. Like, for example, someone comes to you and said, Pins, I want to draft an agreement for a contract to sing a song, which I know
yeah,
you are very familiar. Immediately your mind will be like, oh, you want to sing a song? Where? Who? Are you going to
yeah,
upload
yeah,
here?
yeah,
Are you going to Spotify? Who's your recording company? So these are the checklist in your mind, right? Okay,
yeah.
so now I bring that scenario into, I repeat, this gene editing clinic called Clinic A comes
Yeah.
to you and says, I found a way to cure cancer by
Okay.
gene editing. So I
Yeah.
need your legal advice. I repeat, what are the 2 or 3 things in your mind, Pins, which a lawyer must come in and our checklist for this situation?
First, number one, informed consent. Very important.
Mm,
Informed consent of the patient. Does the patient know the risks? Right. At the very, because informed consent really
good
is
point.
at the very heart of
That's a damn
all
good point.
medical
Mm.
treatments, right?
Informed consent.
And being able to understand that informed consent can be withdrawn at any time, also, right? The other thing I would probably want to know is, uh, how are people going to be affected? Like this technology itself, let's say you found a cure for cancer. If this person comes to me, I will want to ask Richard, how are you going to do this? And I'm going to ask, how are you going to get approvals for this? And I'm going to ask, is this covered under any sort of regulation or laws that we have right now? And
Mm.
because actually my just thinking off the cuff like this right now, uh
I'm
I
also thinking, I
I
was
think
thinking,
it's going to be
yeah.
I think it's going to be quite saturated.
Mm.
It's going to come under regulation for the medical professions.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
depending on the technique itself, it might come, whether it comes under human tissues, whether it comes under, I don't know, there might be different
Yeah,
biotech.
biotech issues. Yeah,
Yeah,
because not,
yeah,
this is not necessarily human tissues because it could be going straight to the DNA itself, the gene
yeah,
itself.
and yeah,
Mm.
and
So
that I guess this is where it's important for us to work together with people in the field, right? With ethicists, with bioethicists, with the scientists themselves to figure out
mm,
how to come up with an equitable framework, lah, Richard. An equitable framework that would allow scientific advancements to continue and to flourish, but also to make sure that they are at the very, very, very important point, very safe.
mm.
Okay, I shouldn't use very safe lah, because I would say safe
Save it
enough,
for now. Yeah.
where
This,
the risk, where the benefits would outweigh the risk lah. I think that's kind of what we have to do lah. We can't look for like complete safeness lah. Like, I mean, it's the same with the vaccines right now as well. Is it completely safe? We have no idea.
yeah,
We know it's
we're
safe
not very
enough.
sure.
We can take it. You know what I mean? So it comes to that point. I think.
I think you mentioning about that pins make me share, and I want to share with the viewers another practical scenario is that construction law. I think most lawyers who do construction law, they actually have to acquire the lingo,
Mm,
the practices to understand how they build a building, build a ship, build whatever,
yeah,
and then apply the construction law to it. So same thing here. I think we need to understand how the gene scientists work, why, who, like you and I just did it, the difference between a tissue and a gene,
yeah,
blah, blah, blah. So I think it's important for any member of the bar who wants to serve this area, need to also work with the people in this area.
yeah. I
Mm.
think that's. I mean, I'm a huge advocate of interdisciplinarity and cross discipline stuff like that. I think that is one of the most effective ways. I mean, it might have the effect of having too many cooks spoil the soup, but for this kind of huge technologies that have such a big impact on citizens, right? For instance, members of the public, you cannot avoid it. It's a necessity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm going to try my luck. I'm not sure whether anybody is going to be adventurous enough to venture a question to you, Pins, because it is a very deep area. I still remembered uh, uh, many years ago when I stepped into a seminar and they were speaking about shipping law. At the time I was a
yeah,
very young
yeah,
lawyer.
yeah, yeah,
Half the time I just sat down there, I was wondering, what is this person speaking? And I think most people will feel like that now because this is the new shipping law, the new whatever. Is
yeah,
good. And you know what, Pins, next week, but this month is all about regulation technology. I
yeah,
want to talk about regulation because this is the regulating a certain technology, and in this
yeah.
case, is a gene editing technology, the
Hmm.
technology to edit gene. So it's a RegTech. We call it RegTech among the lawyers.
Okay.
Next week, we're doing a talk on neuro law, a
Yeah,
neuro law to
that's
understand. Yeah. So we've got another doctor. She's going to share with us introduction neuro law, and we hope to promote that. And then I think I'm going to meet you again in 3 weeks time or 2 weeks time on
yeah,
artificial intelligence, right?
yeah,
Artificial intelligence and law.
yeah,
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. So
yeah.
any questions here from anybody from the floor? If you have, will be good. But while waiting for questions, I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't worry if you don't have any question. It's not easy to think of
Yeah,
one.
no, I think at the very least, Richard, the idea is that I would be able to, we can share these kinds of things with members of the public. I think increasing visibility and knowledge and awareness is one of the most important thing that we can do.
Yeah,
As whether as educators or whatever the case may be, lah, to share what we know so that people are aware. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe when the time is right, Pins, maybe the bar, Malaysian bar may also invite you to speak at the bar's CPD seminars, webinars.
Yeah. I would be very
Uh,
happy to do that. Yeah.
mm, that we'll cross that bridge when we reach there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but okay, I think I've asked you quite a number of questions already. And just in case if somebody want to ask something, we'll give them 1 or 2 more minutes. But in the meantime, Pins, maybe you want to summarize and wrap it up. Okay, so far, just to summarize, the last 1 hour, the first 5 minutes of this webinar, ladies and gentlemen, we actually played a pre-recorded video which
Yeah.
Pins and I met for 5 nights ago. Well, it was a night for me, it's daytime for her, where we discussed about what in the world is gene editing and the law. And she had given us the Captain America example, which I thought was a perfect example to explain to people how you what you're dealing with.
Great.
Yeah, and then of course there's also Rampage, the movie, and Gataka. So I think you go watch these movies and you understand what I mean. Then the last 1 hour, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lau has shared with us the European aspects of regulating gene editing. She has given us a case scenario or what happened in China, where you can see we shared here the Lulu and Nana case. So click on the link under our commentary, you can read this case. And then Dr. Lau also shared with us these comments by a Malaysian professor and asking the question whether Malaysia is ready for to regulate gene editing. Very good question. I read the article, super long but super good. And then for those, I said, I repeat, I'm not propagating Wikipedia. It's a very dangerous place to use as authority. But if you don't understand what we're talking about, click this link. This is a good place to start, but not the authority. So then after that, Dr. Lau also shared about Malaysian aspects where what she meant by ethically running this program. So ethics is a very important issue. Regulation is a very important issue. And this reminds me also, Pins, 20 years ago when the explosion of the internet, the whole world
Yeah.
was scrambling. What is triple W? Who govern who? I buy a book from Amazon and the book is in China and I'm in Malaysia. The book doesn't reach. Who do I sue? Where do I sue? That problem has been solved, you know.
Yeah.
So long story short, we are going through that now, right?
Yes.
So far that's what we had the last 1 hour, Pins. Very
Yeah.
well stated.
Yeah.
You want to summarize on your part, your comments and your aspirations and whatever?
Well, okay, I will just sum this up with something that something that I wrote when I was preparing for a presentation. I presented at a global summit on constitutionalism earlier this year in January. And my take is this, right? When it comes to governance, I call this, obviously it's called the whole of the world approach. I call this the 3 Rs: reframe, redesign, and resilience. Reframe is where we need to look at legislative amendments or additions to establish boundaries between science and law, between state and society, and whether or not these actually have an effect on constitutional frameworks. For redesign, we need to look at international standards for having a strategy of governance, right? To mobilize national and international bodies together.
Mm.
And then look at financial and institutional resources to utilize gene editing and other techniques, right? To produce solutions in that sense. And finally, resilience is to have to look at international norms and to see if these norms can withstand the development of technology, and also by that implication to import the same into Malaysia, for instance. Yeah. So these are just some of my ending thoughts on how we can try to look at governance.
Yeah, the, triple R. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a question here, and I think it's our friend, Dave, Dr. Lau. In your personal opinion, do you think that generally ethical reasons justify a cautious approach to genome editing? It would do a great deal of good after all. In short,
Yeah.
do we need to be so cautious when it's going to be so good?
I
Good question, Davy.
thanks, Dave. Thank you very much. I
I
think that
think we all know who Dave is actually.
yeah, it's not an easy question, lah. I think at the end of the day, I think we have to try and balance ethical, legal, and social implications. You cannot look at it in isolation. It is too
Mm,
interconnected, right? And cautious approach definitely is needed because we do not have enough information at this point of time. The technology was created in 2012. It's relatively new in that sense, right? And
mm.
whilst it may show success and promise in other fields, it does not show just yet how it affects mutations in other genes in the future if we're talking about germline modification.
Mm,
So I do think that we need to have a cautious approach. I'm not saying that it cannot happen at all. I think it's already happening at this point of time for certain areas. They are the Nuffield report that I mentioned, for instance, has a really great set of guidelines about how we can try to evaluate as a community whether something should be allowed, whether gene editing for something should be allowed or not, right?
mm.
But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, we need to ensure the safety aspect. It has to be safe enough. And maybe we are not just ready yet for safe enough for human
Mm.
germline interventions. Yeah.
Cool. Good question with a good answer. Yeah, very good. Yeah, you're a real teacher, like you, Cikgu.
Ah,
Yeah,
cikgu, yeah.
Cikgu. Yeah. All right. So, Dr. Lau has already summarized earlier before we had that late entry question. Thank you, Dave. And I think give and take every now and then there were about 10 to 20 people coming in and out of the video. But the video, as usual, pins is shared across quite a number of
Okay.
other accounts. So I suppose it will spread out later with more people listening to it. But we're not here to chase numbers. We're
Yeah.
here to just share
Yeah.
information. So don't leave the studio yet, Pins. But I think any more last words for today, Pins? Before after we're going to meet you back in 2 weeks' time. But anything for today before I wrap it up?
No, just basically thank you for having me here today. It's been my greatest pleasure. I think one of the reasons, the huge reason why I got into education lah first at the very outset is this whole desire that we want to share lah. I think we need to
Mm.
share. And as a Malaysian, I really want to be able to share whatever I know lah, with my fellow Malaysians lah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And I'm glad
we've
for the
got.
opportunity to be able to do this today.
Thank you, thank you. We got some nice comments from our viewers. Kenny, thank you, Kenny from Ipoh, member of
Thank
the bar,
you.
former chairman of Para Bar. Dave, who I think is a member of Selangor Bar. This was his really good question just now to show here, so that this will be captured, forever recorded here. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lau is a Malaysian, even though she's
Yeah.
in UK. Always nice to have a fellow country person sharing a platform. It was not easy for us to get hold of her because she's really busy marking scripts and teaching lectures and all that. But I thank you, RWC, thank you, Pin Lean, for
Thank
spending the
you.
last 1 hour with us and the many hours preparing for this talk. We will start preparing for the other talk in 2 weeks' time, which is artificial intelligence and regulation.
Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
interesting area. Yeah.
It's
How
also a
do you
very,
regulate?
very,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm,
It's also a very interesting area, but we will definitely talk about that soon enough.
mm. And
Yeah.
then RegTech is regulation technology. And I repeat, ladies and gentlemen, next week we'll be hosting another doctor. Watch out for our flyer, which will be coming out later today. We're talking about neuro law, which may interest criminal defense lawyers, for example. And it also may explain behavioral patterns of human beings, why certain people have a propensity to carry out certain conduct behavior, so we know for a fact in UK and in Australia, neuro law is, and New Zealand, and neuro law is heavily discussed.
Yeah.
All right. So without further ado, I think we all owe Pin Lean a cyber round of applause.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Terima kasih. Harap-harap ada ketupat dengan rendang di England. Tapi sekarang saya difahamkan kat Paddington banyak restoran Malaysia.
Ayo, I don't
Uh,
dare to go lah, Richard. At this point,
yeah.
I'm staying at home all the time. Tapi tak apa, I ada sambal yang I buat di rumah. It's okay.
I always tell people you can take a Malaysian out of Malaysia, but we can never take our Malaysia out of Malaysians.
For
You
sure. You know how many chilies I had to buy? Because you know they sell chilies here like one packet of chili is like only got 5 inside. I
mana
bought I,
cukup.
I bought like 15 of those. So that I could just make at least make this one bottle of sambal, you know.
Okay, tell you what, Pins, next time, once the border open and if I have, with God's willing, I'm able to travel back to UK, especially to watch Everton play. Everton now have no manager, forever losing, but never mind, we are loyal.
Yeah,
I'll bring the chili for you. I
yeah.
give you my
Bring
word.
back chili also.
I'll stop in Brunel and pass you the chilies. So, Tuan-tuan and Puan-puan, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I thank Dr. Lau for her time. I would like to just end by saying that this is a very interesting topic about gene editing and the regulations there too. I think Dato, I keep on calling Dato. I think matter of time we become Dato.
Oh,
Dr. Lau has shared a tremendous amount of topics, even though he was actually scratching the surface. And we look forward to host her again in about 2 weeks' time. Right? Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Get ready for a dinner. 8 o'clock. KL is closing. The whole Malaysia is closing at 8 o'clock. So go and order your food and get your food ready. Thank you very much, everybody. And Pin, don't go yet. See
yeah.
you, everybody. Take care.
Everybody,
Bye
bye.
bye.
Stay safe.